Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Professorming's Strategic Insights. My name is Juzheng Ming. I'm a professor emeritus of the Political Science Department, National Taiwan University. The topic I'm going to share with you today is the Communist China's attitude toward the war in Ukraine. Before getting to the subject, let me divert your attention to two pieces of news. The first one is the naval exercises between China and Russia. Each of them dispatched a special task force fleet to the water north of Japan and Korea. After they met, they navigate along southbound and enter into one of the Japan's straits and enter into West Pacific Ocean to the east of Taiwan. And they continue southbound, enter into South China Sea, and they will have more exercises there. That's the first news. Secondly, China sent some of its army to Belarus to join force with the Belarusian army to hold what they call counter-terrorist operation. The location is fairly close to both Polish and Ukrainian borders. And the explanations offered by international commentators are basically as China's response to two events. The first one is about the 29 countries strong naval exercises led by the United States in South China Sea and nearby waters. This is what they call RIMPAC. And second is China's response to the NATO summit. They knew in advance that in the summit, NATO countries will condemn China for its assistance to the Russia war against Ukraine. Either way, it is considered China's response just signal to the West that they want to strengthen their support to Russia and Belarus in their war in Ukraine. Well, the explanation is basically correct, but incomplete. These are but short-term considerations. Behind the scene, Communist China has a long-term strategic calculations. Before getting to these long-term strategic calculations, let me tell you the story. You see the photo to my right-hand side? This well-known strategy book, The Art of War. It was authored by the famous Sonzi. The story is not about Sonzi. It's about his great-great-great-grandson by the name of Son臏兵. It's about 2,350 years ago, about the Warring State period. During that period, there were 7 major powers. And there was one power, the Qi state. And Son臏兵was one of the advisors to the Marshal Tianji of this Qi state. The king of the state had a hobby. He loved to race horses with his nobles, his marshals, generals, and other princesses. And Tianji, as one of the top marshals, had to participate in these games. In each of the games, usually there are 3 races. One among the top-ranking horses, and second among the middle-ranking horses, and then third one among the low-ranking horses. And there are prizes associated with these games. For instance, each participant would have to bet roughly 10 ounces of gold. And the rule of the game is the winner takes all. So this time, as usual, Marshal Tianji participated in one of the games. And his advisor Son臏兵tagged along and observed the whole thing. Understandably, the king won all the races, and Tianji lost all the games. After returning home, Son臏兵told Tianji, "Go talk to the king tomorrow and ask for more games. I have a sure-to-win strategy for you." Tianji said, "Don't be kidding. Haven't you seen what happened to me today? I've lost 30 ounces of gold. That's a lot of money. I cannot afford to lose like that." Son臏兵said, "Don't worry. Trust me. I have a sure-to-win strategy for you." Tianji was skeptical, but he trusted Son臏兵. So he went to the king and asked for more games. The king bursted out laughing and said, "You got the money to burn, it's fine with me. I don't mind winning more gold from you. Let's have another game by next full moon." So a few days later, there was another game. Before the game, Tianji asked Son臏兵, "What's your strategy? What's your sure-to-win strategy? Tell me now." Son臏兵replied, "I watched the game very closely. Your horses weren't that inferior to those of the kings. You lost only by a distance of nose or two. So what I want you to do is to decorate your low-ranking horse beautifully, magnificently, as the top king, and to raise the top horses of the kings and other nobles. And then use your top-ranking horse to race against your middle-ranking horses, and your middle-ranking horse to race against your low-ranking horses. Tianji understood it immediately and said, what a brilliant idea. And Tianji followed his advice and won. He won with a score of 2-1. So he lost one race and won 2 more races. The king and other nobles were very surprised because it never happened before. And the king summoned Marshal Tianji and asked him for the reason. Tianji dared not lie to the king. And he told him that it was my advisor Sun Bin who told me to do this way. And the king, upon hearing that, was very surprised and summoned Sun Bin and talked to him and was awed by his talents and his thinking. And he appointed Sun Bin as a chief military advisor. In later years, Sun Bin helped out Marshal Tianji. They fought and won many wars and gained a lot of territory for the state. So that leaves us a saying for thousands of years: to tackle your opponent's top horse with your low-ranking horses. But after hundreds and thousands of years, the implications of this saying have expanded and twisted. And now by Chinese, it means use your low-ranking horse to entangle with your opponent, to tie him up, and to wear him out eventually. So you may wonder, how is this horse racing story happened 23-some-hundred years ago having to do with the war in Ukraine today? Well, let me give a background. In China's eyes, or in the eyes of the Communist China, it's been targeted by and contained by European countries and the United States in fields like trade, technology, finance, chips, and it got sanctioned, and they talked about de-risking against China. In addition, the United States strengthened and upgrade its alliances or pact or defense pact with many countries: Japan, South Korea, and the Philippines. And back in 2021, the United States established a new defense pact called AUKUS with Australia and UK, also targeting Communist China as its main opponent. And not to mention the G7 countries, the European Union, and NATO all accused China, Communist China, of helping Russia, threatening Taiwan, and challenging international order. So in the eyes of Communist China, it's been targeted at, isolated by, and contained by the Western powers, led by the United States. So after the outbreak of the Ukraine war, China has been thinking, how can I make the best use of this war to push forward or to promote my national interest? Namely, what would my strategic calculations be for this war? Eventually, they came up with 2 ultimate goals. The first goal is to divert the West's attention away from China and to reduce pressure. The second goal is to use this war as a war of attrition, to wear out the military strength, armament and equipment, state finance, and even social morale of the United States, European countries, and even Russia. So in this case, as Communist China see it, Ukraine is its low-ranking horse, and the United States, European countries, and Russia would be the top-ranking horses. China wants to use the low-ranking horse, Ukraine, to wear out the top-ranking horses: the United States, European countries, and Russia. So for the Chinese communists, the Ukraine war would be the longer the better, the more ferocious the better. It would at best to become a protracted warfare and a warfare of attrition. And allow me to remind you, Communist China used this strategy before. Remember the Vietnam War? It lasted roughly from 1965 to 73, 74. And in that case, Vietnam being the low-ranking horse, and the United States being the top-ranking horse. And eventually, the United States was worn out in areas like military strength, national finance, and even in social morale. So let's go back to the news I mentioned earlier. China sent its forces to have military exercises with both Russia and Belarus, just to show support to Russia for its war effort against Ukraine, and eventually to wear out the United States, European countries, and Russia. This is what they say by adding oil to the fire, just to prolong the war. In addition to buy oil from Russia and provide them with chips, parts, and dual-use component parts. And finally, allow me to remind you, there's more to China's calculation of this Ukrainian war. It accuses the United States of adding oil to the fire by providing weapons, more weapons to Ukraine to prolong the war. So the United States is a bad guy. It makes fortune and makes money out of war. And Communist China in this way plays the role of a good guy, and it wants to harvest the fruit of international propaganda warfare. So this is the strategic calculation behind the Ukrainian war on the part of the Communist China. It wants to maximize its interest by referring to the horse race wisdom, which happened 2,500 years ago. And this is what I want to share with you today. I hope you like our program. I'll see you next time then.